So I recently did a video on the best watches for slimmer wrists, and I had tons of feedback, tons of comments from you guys saying that these watches that I was mentioning weren't exactly affordable. So this is my affordable version of that list. This is the best affordable slim wrist watches, all coming in at below £1,000. Welcome back to the Chisholm Hunter channel. My name is Harrison, as always, and this one is specifically for my slim wrist gang out there, those of you that like smaller watches. To be fair, you don't necessarily need a slim wrist to enjoy smaller, but you guys know what I mean. Before we start this video, if you could do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button to support this channel, I would really appreciate it. We're fast approaching the 100k mark, which is absolutely, utterly insane. So thank you guys so much. And there will be a big giveaway given at the 100k mark. So thank you guys for supporting this channel. Let's dive straight into the first watch on the list. This is the HMS 003 from Baltic. And the dial that I've chosen specifically is the silver and blue combination, but you do have a ton of different colors to choose between. I mean, just looking at it at the moment, you've got blue and gold, which isn't really my thing. Then you've got a black and silver with a green strap. That is more my thing. Then you have more of a salmon-y kind of copper looking dial. And these are surprisingly deceptive. Honestly, coppery dials never look good online, but on the wrist, they always, I repeat, always look brilliant. Now this watch is definitely for you slim wrist gang out there, coming in at 36.5 millimeters in diameter. It comes in at 46 millimeters lug to lug and 13 millimeters in height, 10 millimeters without that domed glass. Now the glass is actually highly domed, so it's set really high to make it look that little bit more vintage, and it is in Hesselite instead of sapphire crystal. So the Hesselite definitely does add a degree of non-attractiveness, in my opinion, to this watch. But then Hesselite is still a pretty awesome material. I mean, it's what Speedmasters use in their Speedmasters that went to the moon, so it's definitely a great material, but it's just not as durable and not as functional in today's society as I would say sapphire crystal. The movement in this model is the 8315 automatic movement. This is designed in Japan by the Mayota manufacturer and offers 60 hours of power reserve. Now this watch is definitely that little bit more dressy. It looks more like a dress watch to me. And yes, there are some features on this watch that just aren't as functional in today's society, if I'm perfectly honest, a bit like that Hesselite crystal, but it does come in at £300. £300. That is quite cheap for a watch like a Baltic. So I do think it hits that affordable slim wristed category. The next watch on the list is a little bit of a boring one because everybody's heard of this watch at least 10 times before. Probably more than 10 times if you watched our videos, because I was obsessed with it for a period of time. I literally bought one. This is the Tissot PRX Powermatic 80. Now this is the 40mm variant, but you do have a 35mm variant as well. Now I don't think I'd be over-exaggerating by saying there's hundreds of different variants of this watch, because I literally think they are when you include the different sizes, the different color variations, the quartz, the automatic. They kind of dogpiled into the PRX line, Tissot did, once they figured out how successful it was. I mean, you can't pick up an affordable Genta-inspired 70s looking watch apart from the PRX. So they kind of had a really big portion of the market, and the PRX rocketed into fame very, very quickly. And because Tissot are a more affordable brand, they released tons of watches, and thus we had tons of variants of the PRX. And that's actually brilliant for us Tissot lovers because it just gives us more variation to choose between. This specific PRX comes in at 40mm in diameter. It's 10.93mm thick, so it's brilliantly thin, and its lug to lug comes in at 39.5. It's water resistant to 100 meters, comes in full stainless steel, and it has a beautiful depth to that dial. I mean, it has that waffle dial that we kind of know and love from Tissot PRX automatic variants. Now, a quick way of discovering whether a PRX is automatic or whether it's quartz is whether the dial is flat, kind of brushed, or whether it's got that waffle dial. The waffle dials have automatic movements, the brushed don't. The movement in this watch is the Powermatic 80 movement, and it's visible through the open caseback. Now, the Powermatic 80 movement is pretty common. I mean, we see it in loads of Tissot models, we see it in loads of Certina models, and vice versa. We see it in tons of different watches. And it's because the Swatch Group actually own ETA, as well as Tissot and as well as Certina. That's why we see the Powermatic 80 movement in all of these watches. This PRX comes in at £640. Yes, by no way is this cheap, but I do think it's pretty brilliantly priced for what you get. You get an automatic movement with 80 hours, you get a 70s inspired design, you get beautiful dial depth, you get a date window, and a genuine Swiss automatic luxury watch. Honestly, these watches are brilliant for a pretty brilliant price. The next watch we're going to talk about is a little bit of an obscure one. It's weird because I hadn't heard of this watch brand until I'm going to say a couple of months ago. And it really caught me by surprise. And after I figured out what they were and what they stood for, I started researching, went down the rabbit hole like a lot of us watch enthusiasts do. And I figured out that they're actually a really affordably brilliant brand. This is the Maen Hudson 38mm MK4. And before we start talking about this watch, I mean, just look at it. It is pretty goddamn handsome, if you ask me. This watch comes in at 38mm in diameter, 46mm lug to lug, and 12.05mm in thickness, and that's including the glass. So if you actually take that glass away, it comes in at 10.5mm in thickness. It comes in full stainless steel, and it also has a Sellita SW200-1, and that's a Swiss-made movement. This watch has a beautiful sort of matte looking sandblasted dial. It looks honestly great. See, with those splashes of red against that dial as well, it looks brilliant. I'm especially a fan of the little circle on the second hand having the color red put in it. I think it just adds so much character to this watch. The bezel as well on this watch is just, to me, fantastic. It really looks like a premium brand. Now, this watch comes in at 639 euros. I'm not going to lie, I don't know what the conversion is there, so I'm just going to bring it up on the screen instead. But I think it's around about 550 quid. So that's pretty good. The next watch on the list is the Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical, a mechanical watch from a brilliant brand. I'm such a huge Hamilton fanboy. I just couldn't make this video without putting them in because as well as having one, so knowing that it's brilliant because I got one, I also am just a huge fan of the CEO, Vivian Schofer, and what the company are doing with their new lines. I'm also a huge fan about how they listen to their audience. They listen to the watch community and build watches based on what we want instead of what they want to do. There are so many variations of the Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical, like literally so many variations. So you do have a ton of options with this watch. Now remember that this watch is a field watch. It was made for the field, for military personnel. It has military roots, and that's why it is so simplistic. That's why it's big, it's bold, or not big, it's not technically big, but the numerals on it are big. It's very readable, highly legible, and very quick. It's a very quick watch. This watch comes in at 38mm in diameter, 9.5mm in thickness, and 20mm in lug width. It has the H50 caliber, which is a manual wound caliber with 80 hours of power. This specific model comes with a NATO strap. Now, a NATO strap is brilliant for the field. It's brilliant for those outdoor adventures because you're not scared about getting it scratched. You're not scared about bashing it off of a rock and chipping the bracelet of your watch. So I do think that NATO straps work well with outdoorsy watch. But the good thing about this is that you can put or add a bracelet on it if you wanted to. And I've literally seen people in the Chisholm Hunter showrooms where we're official stockists of most of these watch brands. So if you do want any watches, then come to Chisholm Hunter. Shameless plug right there. But I do see people come into Chisholm Hunter for work and they have a suit and tie on and they have a Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical with the bracelet and it looks unbelievable in any situation. With the NATO strap on this watch, it comes in at £545. Next on the list, we have the Seiko Prospect Speed Timer 1969 recreation. I know it's quite weird to have a chrono model in with the kind of slim wristed watches, but I do believe that this chrono model is too good to pass up. And also it comes in at 39mm. So that's pretty awesome. Now, please remember with chrono models, they do flange a little bit on your wrist because you do have the pushers at the right hand side. I would say this wears more like a 40 than a 39 that it comes in at. So just bear that in mind. It is a little bit more on the chunky side, but I do think it still fits the category. This watch's dial comes in white, and it's just a beautiful white against those blue sub dials. The bezel comes in black, and it comes in at 39mm in diameter, 13.3mm in thickness, and the case length, that lug to lug, comes in at 45.5 millimeters. It comes in full stainless steel and has the caliber V192 movement, which is a solar powered movement. Now, the solar powered movement in this watch is actually charged through natural light, but also unnatural light. So you don't need to it's not like having a plant. You don't need to leave it in the sun and let it grow or let it charge. You can literally be like I am right now in the studio with a light on and it will still be charging, which is actually pretty awesome. It kind of takes the stress away of having to get the battery replaced every 2 years or 3 years. This Seiko speed timer comes in at £640. The next watch brand I'm going to talk about is one that I feel is totally underrepresented in the industry. I feel like it's often overlooked for the other Swatch brands like Tissot or Hamilton, but I honestly believe that it's equally as brilliant as those brands. And honestly, I think this brand is one to watch. I do believe that this brand will take off, and when it does, I'm going to clip this section of the video and say I told you so. This is the Certina DS Action Diver 38mm with a Powermatic 80 movement. Remember what I said about those Powermatic 80 movements? They're ETA movements. ETA is owned by Swatch. Swatch Group owns Certina, Hamilton, Tissot. So there's lots of the same movement in these models. Now, there are tons of variations when it comes to the Certina DS Action Diver. I mean, you have loads of dial variations. You've got blue, green, you've got bimetal, you've got titanium with baby blue. That's honestly my favorite. But for this one, let's just stick with the black dial because it's the most simplistic and it's probably the most popular. This model comes in at 38mm in diameter, 12.2mm in height. It's water resistant to 300 meters. I say again, 300 meters. You find a lot of luxury high horology brands can't get their thickness ratio right when they need a high water resistance, but this watch can for a fraction of the price. It comes in full stainless steel, has sapphire crystal glass on the glass is sapphire crystal. And aside from that, it just looks absolutely brilliant on the wrist. I remember filming a Certina in the Isle of Skye, and they had this idea, this concept around changing the components of your watch. Now, I don't think it never really took off, but it was a brilliant concept. I'm not sure if you guys will remember this video. I'll maybe link it up here if you want to see it. But essentially, they'd have 3 different cases, a couple of different straps, and a couple of different dials. And out of that DS Plus pack, you get maybe three watch variations for the price of one. And honestly, when I was reviewing it in Skye, I thought it was a brilliant idea. And I honestly don't really know why it didn't take off. But I think this brand is just a bit ahead of its time, if I'm perfectly honest. And I honestly really, really rate them. So definitely have a look. These watches come in at £765. The next watch on the list is the Citizen Saiosa, or Taiosa. I'm dyslexic. Heavily dyslexic, and I get this wrong every time without fail. So I've probably said it wrong. I do apologize, but take a look at these watches. Again, you've got tons of variations when it comes to the Saiosa or Taiosa, whatever you want to call it. My personal favorite being the light blue, but you do also have options like yellow, which I'm not as much of a fan of, black, your more standard colors, but there are also those kind of more funky standout colors. Now, the Citizen Saiosa comes in at 40mm in diameter. It has sapphire crystal glass, has a full stainless steel bracelet and case, and it looks very 70s inspired, 70s-esque. It also has that bezel at the right-hand side at the bottom, which gives it kind of a point of uniqueness. It kind of is in the same position where a Seiko bezel would be, apart from it's not as aggressive and not as showable. It's not show-offable, if that makes any sense. It's not as visible, is probably the best way to put it. And I do quite like it. It gives a point of difference. I quite like the colors when it comes to Citizen, and there's a funny thing in the industry when it comes to colors, and this goes across every industry. I was doing a shoot for North Face, I'm going to say 2 years ago. It was a very long time ago. I'm getting a bit older now. But the North Face said, we want you to shoot our yellow jacket, our outdoors wear yellow jacket. And I said, why do you want me to do your yellow jacket? Because you just told me the black jacket was the best seller. And they said, yes, but nobody ever clicks on the black jacket. They will always click on the yellow and then go through and buy the black. And it just kind of got me thinking about funky colors and when brands release funky colors, but they do it in minimal numbers. What you tend to find in the watch industry is that the brands will always promote the more funky colored watches because they get clicks, but they don't necessarily produce a lot of them because they know that they won't sell as fast as the safer colors. And I think that smaller brands in the industry need to keep the train going of funky colors to keep the eyes on their brand, but they don't necessarily release a lot of those colors. Whereas you get to Rolex that already has a ton of hype and a ton of, everybody loves Rolex, that change like the most minute detail on a watch and everyone loses their minds. I don't know, I went off on a tangent there, but it's kind of weird how that works. Now, the Citizen Syosa comes in at £299, so is half the price of the watches that we just covered, and is a brilliant watch for the money. Thank you guys so much for watching this Chisholm Hunter video. If you have enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button to see more. I'd really, really appreciate that. And I'll see you guys real soon.